So let's start this way. When I was teaching in LA many years ago, there was usually in the classroom setting, so you give some teachings, you give some tools, some technology, and then you leave a space for some questions and answers. But in order for me to learn the names of the student, as I make an effort here also, before they ask a question, I ask them to state their name. So this one time, this gentleman, whatever we were talking about, and I asked him, if there are any questions. So you could see this one man raising his hand. He was just anxious to ask the question. And so I said, yes. I said, but before, what's your name? And I guess he was so caught up in the moment, like he hesitated. He couldn't remember his name. He looked down at his name tag. Oh, yeah. And then he stated his name. So I was thinking of that this morning because so many of us have forgotten who we really are. We've forgotten what our real name is. You can say your name is like mine is Chaim or yours is. You can say it all at once. That's okay. Your name is? Wrong. You are superheroes, and that's the point of this morning. We are in the image and likeness of the Creator. It's such a simple statement that we don't really grasp the depth, and or we just don't believe it. But every one of us who are here particularly, we're here on Spiritual Sunday. It means that somehow we believe we have a soul, we have a spirit, we have something that came from the Creator. So how could the Creator give us a piece of itself and not give us its powers? The power to heal, the power to create, the power to bless, the power to transform our lives and the world around us. Does that make any sense to you? If we have the power of the Creator, we have the power of the Creator. But unfortunately, over so many lifetimes and so much in this world pushing us into the illusion that we don't believe it. We fall to all of our lack, we fall to all of our foibles, we fall to all of our limitations. And the sad part is, it's not that we shouldn't see those limitations. We have to stop believing that that's our real being. We're not those people. We're not people of limitation. We are people who are the light of the Creator incarnate in the physical world. We truly have the abilities to be superheroes. And isn't it interesting, recently there's a whole number of superhero movies. You ever watch them? Batman, Superman came back. You've got Captain America and the Iron Man and all these different things. You ever seen those movies? Yeah. Yes or yes? Come on. You see the movies, yes? How many of you, as you're watching the movies, start doing this? Yeah, I could be Superman. I could be Captain America. I could be these people. Yes? Yes or yes? Absolutely, we feel like it. Our understanding here is why. Why is it? Is it just a wish and a hope? Gee, I wish we could be like Superman. But do you know that the story of Superman is based on a biblical story? Ask the creators. You go on YouTube, watch an interview. The creators of Superman based it on the story of Moses. So they took out of the Bible the story of Moses, and they made it as a superhero comic. You and I, in the 21st century, are watching movies like that, and there is that part of us that starts to feel, yes, I can be a superhero. Yes, I can do those things. Yes, I can fly. How many of you, when you were kids, dreamed you could fly? Exactly. And then what happens? Then we become adults. On the one hand, we're very proud to be adults because we can do things we couldn't do as children. But on the other hand, we lose some of that childlike awe, some of that childlike hope, and that childlike limitlessness. A child can fly, a child can see invisible friends, a child can imagine all kinds of things. And then we become adults. As my teacher, the Rav Berg, always called it, we become adulterated, we become corrupted and limited, and then we say, oh no such thing as invisible friends, no such thing as flying, no such thing as, seeing peace and harmony in the world, no such thing as good people, and we fall to all those illusions. And as the Kabbalists teach us, the more we listen to that falsehood, those lies, the more we'll tend to believe them. When a parent looks at a child, or teachers look at children and say, you cannot, you are not, you will not achieve, you will not make it. When they hear it enough, instead of drawing from that superhero within and all that's been given us, we start to believe that we're limited. I may have shared with you, but it's worth sharing again. You ever seen a big elephant? Big elephant, an adult elephant. So what do they say about an adult elephant? Powerful. I mean, can knock over trees, can break all kinds of things, etc. Extremely powerful. But do you know why they can take this huge elephant and they can hold it to a small little wooden post with a small rope and it won't go away? Because when it's a child, it's taught. They put a big chain on it, they chain the leg to a post, and the elephant learns over years that it cannot move more than whatever it is, 6, 8 feet because of this chain. So then when it becomes this huge pachyderm, this powerful animal, and could break easily any chain or the tree or what have you, it's grown up for so many years believing that it cannot, that it doesn't. It doesn't. And that's what I want us to change today. We have that power that the Creator put in us. We just have to believe it. We have to accept it, and then we have to live it. That's the power. You read stories. I read a story, 15-year-old Austin Smith was working on the car with his grandfather. Probably heard very similar stories. The car fell on his grandfather. What was he to do? He can't pick up a car. But in that moment, without thinking, without believing his limitations, his only concern was for his grandfather. He picked up the end of the car, pulled his grandfather out, and then dropped the car. You hear those stories over and over and over again. Google them. I encourage you, Google them. It's not 1, 2, or 3. It's hundreds of stories like that. People that do superhuman things, in a moment they forget about themselves. This 15-year-old looks at his grandfather. Is he thinking about himself? No, he's worried about his grandfather. Concern and love for another person, he became a superhero. He did things that we normally wouldn't believe we could do. Go back to that story of Moses. Why did Moses, even they say Moses stuttered, he wasn't a good speaker, he didn't believe he was a leader. In fact, when God called him to go into Egypt, to tell Pharaoh, let my people go, he said, wait a minute, but there's other people around. He named a few other righteous souls. He said, well, what about them? God said, no, you're chosen. You're the one being picked. And so, because he felt the pain of all the brethren, all the people who were suffering in Egypt, that's why God chose him, and that's what drew out his superpower. So as we look at ourselves, we have to ask ourselves, what are our superpowers? Because we cannot believe that the Creator could create us and not give us some kind of power, some kind of talents and abilities. And in fact, if you're interested, you can look afterwards. There's a section in the Zohar, in the volume 4, section called Chaya Sarah. And it says in this section, verse 41, if you want to see it, that the Creator gives every human being talent and ability, wealth and resources, children and people around them, in order to spread the light of the Creator of their soul. That's why we're given these things. We're given talent and ability. We're given friends and connections. We're given resources. And he says, paradoxically, if we don't use them to bring light into the world, if we don't use them to share our talent, our ability, our love, our kindness, our compassion with others, then it says, literally, we will be hurt by them. But what does hurt mean? How many of you sitting in this room right now know you have more talent and more ability and more potential than you're revealing right now? How many of you feel aches and pains because of that? Why do you think superhero movies are so popular? Because when we go, we can pretend we're the superheroes. You can walk out and feel you're a superhero, don't you? You walk out feeling, wow, I could fly, I could do that, I can do this, I can have that power. And then we get back to our regular life. And we go back to our adulthood. And we forget, and we don't believe, and we go back into our limitations. I would like to ask you right now to think 1, 2, or 3 talents and abilities that you've been given by the Creator. Just think of them for a moment. What is special about you? And don't worry about the ego. There's going to be that little voice that says, well, no, we're learning here not to have ego. This is not a case to worry about the ego. It's a case, this is a moment to be objective with yourself. What talent, what ability, what capabilities do you have that we understand the Creator gave us? I want to see it in your eyes. You all have one or two or three? You know that hiding inside that talent and ability is the light of God. And that's why it says, as we will share them, and we hold the consciousness to share the light that comes with them, then we can touch the heart and souls of every other person. And then we can awaken the superhero in them too. We can awaken them to their potential. Does it sound good to you? Okay, so please stand up. First thing I want you ready with the music? So the first thing I want you to do is spend 30 seconds or so going across the ocean of this aisle or the aisles behind you. Don't just turn to the right or the left. I want you to meditate that as you're going to share your talent and ability with everybody else in this room, you are sharing your light of your superhero nature. You ready? First of all, I want you to give yourselves a hand because I saw... You notice the way it goes. The more those of you who are willing right away to jump and share, the more you drew the people who are a little more hesitant to jump and share. And that's the beauty of this. You know, that like will attract like. So as we go out, and it doesn't matter what your talent and ability is, we understand it's simply the cover for the light of the Creator. In the same way, simple way, those of you remember Superman, Clark Kent, right? You look at Clark Kent. Clark Kent's really Superman, but he's hiding in the disguise of Clark Kent. Mild manner, you know, it goes on and on and on. So the same with us. We're all here, superheroes, truly, beings of the light, pure and perfect beings of light, but we're hiding under whatever disguise we call ourselves. Business people, friends, I don't know, men, women, whatever, boys and girls, doesn't make a difference. Whatever it is, it's just a way of hiding. Today is a day to bring out the opposite. And when does it happen? One, we said, when there's love or concern for somebody else. So I read a very inspiring story. I mean, teenagers, most teenagers are teenagers. You remember when you were a teenager. So here was this one young man riding down the street on his bicycle, and he saw a woman look like she was in distress. So instead of just continuing to ride by, something woke up in him. The distress of this woman, stranger to him, woke up his compassion also and his concern. So he went and asked her what was wrong. She had locked her keys in the car. So at first he tried, you know, all the things with the hanger or what have you. Didn't work. So then, not only did she lock her keys, but her cell phone's in the car. So she couldn't even call her husband to try and get him to get a neighbor to drive the keys over because they only had the one car. So what does this teenager do? He says, here's my cell phone, call your husband, tell him I'm coming to get your keys. She says, yeah, but it's like 4 miles away. Says it doesn't matter. So he drove basically 8 miles on his bicycle to pick up the keys and bring it back. Most of us may not think of that as a superhero power, like flying, I don't know, bending steel and things like that. But you know what? For that woman in that moment, he was a superhero. It doesn't have to be like the ones we read where, you know, the grenade is thrown in the middle of the platoon and the officer jumps on it. Yes, those are very powerful. Those are amazing. People sacrifice their physical life for the sake of others. We are not always called to do that, but on a daily basis, we are being called, are we not? To help the woman who locked her keys in there, the guy who's working on the car who may need help, whatever it is. Every day, if we'll open our eyes, we are being called to be the superheroes, to achieve our potential that the Creator gave us. And all we are here to learn is that for our benefit and for the benefit of others, we need to think about expressing that. We need to do the actions to express that superhero ability. If you read the story of Jonah the prophet, Jonah, you could imagine, it's probably somebody like you and I, really didn't want to be a superhero, really didn't want to be a prophet. But what happened? God called him. And God told Jonah, I have a message that you're going to go deliver to the people of Nineveh. And he said to himself, I don't want to do that. So what does he do? He tries to run away. If you know the story, he runs away. He's on a cruise. The ocean starts to shake. He finally realizes, it's because of him the ocean is shaking. They throw him overboard. He spends 3 days in the belly of some huge fish that may not be a whale, but huge fish. 3 days and 3 nights. What the Kabbalists teach us this means for us is often when we are called, when we are being asked to step up to the plate, when we're being asked to live into our next level, when we're being asked to be more than we are today, to take whatever you shared your talent and ability, today you're using it at one level. I have no doubt, because that's what makes you feel good. But today is the day we want to start looking around and see other people who are also in need and be concerned for what's going on around us. And we want to take those talents and abilities and take them to their higher level, or use the ones that we haven't been using. Because like with Jonah, he had to go through those 3 days, if you want to call it the dark night of the soul, where he's contemplating. He was asked by God to go deliver a message. That's it. How much easier could it be? Just go deliver the message. He didn't even have to really do anything but deliver the message. But he didn't feel either he was capable, he wanted, he was ready. All the excuses that we often give ourselves why we can't do what we've just been called to do. Because I'm sure there's not one of us in this room today that don't have those little thoughts, the little voices in our head, that little voice from inside of us that's telling us, do this, do that, go meet this person, go help, do something. And then right away there's that other voice on the other side of our head. Maybe you're not ready, maybe it's not the time, maybe when the kids grow up and they're out of the house. I mean, there'll be 1,000 excuses why or what to wait for. But like Jonah, he ended up in the belly of the whale or the fish for 3 days to think about it. We've had our 3 days. It's now time, because in the end of the story, God called him. He spent those 3 days, and what did he do in the end? He went to go deliver the message. If we are unconditional love, as the Creator that created us is, we say God is love. And we're in the image and likeness of God. And therefore, unconditional love is also our nature. But it's hidden in all these talents and abilities. Our job is not to let it be hidden anymore. We're not here to be Clark Kent. We're here to let it be expressed. Because as the saying goes, when the going gets tough, the spiritual get growing. When the going gets tough, the spiritual get growing. And that's why you're here. I don't care if somebody dragged you here this morning. You're here because your soul asked them to drag you so that you could learn this lesson this morning, to wake up a new level of your potential, to become more of the person that the Creator created you to be. In 1969, my teacher, the Rav Berg, his teacher left the world. His Kabbalistic master left the world. He was left to bring the wisdom of Kabbalah to the world. In 1971, he married Karen Berg, 1970. And from 1970 till 2004, the two of them together brought Kabbalah to the masses, so that people all over the world were able to learn this wisdom and learn these tools and this technology. They fought against the establishment. They fought against people who said you're not supposed to bring it to everybody, that it's supposed to be kept secret, etc. They fought from 70 to 2004. But up to that point, Karen Berg was in the shadow of the Rav, because the Rav was the one who learned from Rav Brandwein, who learned from Rav Ashlag, who had a lineage all the way back to the source of the Kabbalah, the Zohar itself, Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. And Karen was his soulmate, but she was in the shadow. 2004, the Rav had a stroke. First thing that happened, that created a question in people's minds. How could this Kabbalist, this true master Kabbalist, how could he have a stroke? If he's teaching us immortality, if he's teaching us the power of mind over matter, if he's teaching us all the tools and the power of these Kabbalistic technologies, how could he have a stroke? That's like looking at Clark Kent. But if you looked at the Superman, you saw that in spite of the stroke, at 80 years old, half the brain matter just disappeared into mush. So if you ask a doctor, in fact, there's an interview of a couple doctors, said at that point he should have just been a vegetable. But the Rav proved to us immortality, because within 24 hours of this major stroke, half the brain disappearing, he was walking, talking, thinking, coherent, conscious. So you could look and say he had a stroke, or you could look and say he's teaching us in our day in front of us, not a biblical story, but right in front of us, the power of mind over matter, the power of the Zohar and Kabbalah, the power of these teachings. But at that point, Karen Berg could no longer be in the shadows. Her true potential had to come out, because they had spent all those 30 some odd years bringing Kabbalah to the masses together. And now that the Rav was doing it in a different way, she couldn't afford just to sit back and say, what do I do? She came forward like Jonah. She had her few days, dark days of the soul, because her life was also changed. But she picked herself up, as we can take that example, and she went out to continue bringing Kabbalah to the masses. She went out to meet world leaders. She went out to speak at peace seminars, because we know that Kabbalah is the wisdom that can unite all humanity. 2013, the Rav left the physical world, so he's no longer here physically. But I have no doubt in my heart and my soul that his soul is attached to Karen just as powerfully, if not more so, than when he was in the physical world. And now what is Karen doing? She's inspiring things like this Spiritual Sunday. Reach out to people of all walks of life, all cultures, all backgrounds. Karen's doing around the world, breathing, Kabbalah and yoga, different meditations, etc. Because if we are going to gather people together to see peace and harmony in the world, then there has to be facets of Kabbalah that look familiar to everybody. And that's the power of what's going on. My main point is that under these circumstances, Karen has blossomed into her true potential. For me, it's the most amazing example of being able to overcome whatever obstacle life throws at you. And there's nothing more difficult than facing the passing of a loved one, especially somebody who's been so close for so many years doing everything they did. But you and I can take that as inspiration. You and I can take that today and say, yes, the Creator created me to be a superhero. The Creator created me pure and perfect, a pure and perfect being of the light. You and I are pure and perfect beings of the light. We are superheroes, but the superhero that may not be in the movies, but we are definitely superheroes for people around us, are we not? There's somebody in your life right now that looks up to you like a superhero because of something you may have said that you didn't even realize you said. It may have been in your mind something very small, but you never know how much a few words in the right moment, a simple action, just to be there, like this 15-year-old who picked up the car on his grandfather, or the teenager who was willing to ride 8 miles round trip to bring back a set of keys to help a distressed woman. Those stories are repeating hundreds and thousands of times in this world today. The trouble is we don't always see them. They're not front page news. What's front page news? All the illusion. And I don't mean illusion that it's not real, but we know the reality. We are pure and perfect beings of light. The reality of this world is the light of the Creator. The reality is we have that ability of drawing that out. We just have to act in that same way. Like will attract like. Just as you went around and you shared your talent and ability with other people and you were sharing your light with them, it awakens something new in each one of us in this room. Now our job is to take this and go out into the world with it. Because imagine what would happen when we, all of our superhero nature, all of our next level of the light of God that's inside of us, like Moses, like Jonah, like all the biblical prophets, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, you read them all. Jesus, Moses, Buddha, they all faced challenges. But it only led them to bring out their superhero nature. Our job today is not to wait for those challenges. Our job today is to challenge ourselves. Wake up. Find something to do. We affirm every day or every Sunday, I commit myself to behave with greater love, kindness, and compassion towards all human beings. Find one person today that you can act in a greater level of kindness, love, and compassion. The Creator created you to be a superhero. Today is the day to be that superhero, because if there's ever a time in history that the world needs us as superheroes, it's today. God bless.